Need for Speed Underground stands among the most influential racing games of its generation, published by Electronic Arts. In this episode, we'll trace its origins, from the studio vision to the design decisions that shaped its identity. You'll hear how its focus on car customization, urban nightscapes, and a curated soundtrack reshaped player expectations and pushed street racing culture into the mainstream. Join me as we examine the creative risks, technical innovations, and cultural impact that made the game a lasting classic. Before Underground, Need for Speed didn't have one main team in charge. Different EA studios took turns making the games, each trying out new ideas. That changed in the early 2000s, when a group in Vancouver stepped in and reshaped the whole series. EA Black Box, first called Black Box Games, started in 1998 in British Columbia. It was founded by developers who used to work at Radical Entertainment. At first, the studio worked on its own. Later, EA bought them and brought them into their larger team of studios. Back then, Need for Speed had already been through many different makers. The early games were built by EA Canada, which was once called Distinctive Software. They had guided the series from the 1990s into the early 2000s. When EA bought Black Box, the studio was asked to help keep the franchise going. They started by working on games around the time of Hot Pursuit 2, and soon took on a bigger role. By 2003, Black Box became the main studio behind Need for Speed Underground, the 7th game in the main series. This wasn't just another job, it was a chance to completely refresh the brand. At the time, the series had already tried different styles of gameplay. Earlier games focused on 3 main ideas: fancy European supercars, long scenic tracks, and police chases. This worked well during the late 90s and early PS2 years, but it no longer matched what was really happening in car culture. Sales and popularity were starting to drop. Racing games were moving toward car customization, urban style, and youth culture. Black Box, still a newer studio within EA, was asked to build something completely different. EA Black Box moved away from the dream of owning luxury cars. Instead, they focused on everyday tuner cars, late-night city racing, and deep customization. This was the 7th main Need for Speed game and a clean break from the exotic fantasy era. Older games featured supercars and beautiful highways. Underground shifted toward import tuner culture and street racing in urban settings, creating a fresh direction that shaped future games. This change made perfect sense at the time. In the early 2000s, tuner culture went mainstream, and street racing became a huge part of pop culture. Movies like The Fast and the Furious made customization cool, shifting the fantasy from buying an expensive supercar to building your own. Black Box's new direction changed the player goal: build, tune, and earn respect. Underground let players customize cars with real aftermarket parts, both in looks and performance. Its career mode was built around gaining reputation and climbing the ranks in a street racing scene. This focus on tuning and personal style came straight from real life, everyday drivers turning normal cars into powerful machines. The developers took clear inspiration from the customization craze of the era. All racing in Need for Speed Underground takes place inside Olympic City, a made-up city built just for the game's street racing story. Every race, upgrade, and event happens on this one city map instead of separate tracks. A big change for the series. The city is split into different areas: downtown, Chinatown, Market District, Port Royal, and an airport zone. Each part looks and feels different with its own buildings, traffic, and road layouts. Unlike older Need for Speed games that had sunny daytime roads, Underground set all its action at night. Races happen on lit-up city streets, matching the vibe of illegal street racing and its secret world. The effect wasn't just visual, it made players feel like they were part of a real, hidden racing scene. Traffic was always on in Underground. You couldn't turn it off. This made races more tense and sold the idea that you were speeding through a real, working city, not an empty track. Olympic City wasn't made for free exploration. Instead, it was built as a close set of race paths that kept players moving at all times. The way it looked and was laid out led to 3 main results. It felt alive, always nighttime and full of traffic. It had a strong identity, thanks to its glowing neon streets that became Underground's signature style, and it felt believable, making the world of illegal street racing seem real and familiar. Since everything fit together so well, Olympic City wasn't just a background. It was the true core of the game, influencing the cars, the racers, and the constant chase for reputation. Need for Speed Underground wasn't just a fresh start for the series. It was also a technical step forward. EA Black Box used new rendering tools and visual style choices to make the game look more like a stylish street racing movie than a typical racing game. On PC, Underground was a big leap. It was the first NFS game that needed graphics cards to support hardware transform and lighting. This shift let the game leave behind older, simpler graphics and use newer, more advanced lighting and shading technology. Because of this, it could show more realistic light on the cars, create richer and more detailed tracks and surroundings, and include visual effects that happen live as you race. For the computers and consoles of 2003, this was a much higher level of visual quality than what older racing games offered. Black Box used many layers of visuals to create a feeling of speed and energy. Particle effects like sparks, tire smoke, nitrous bursts, and road debris, dynamic reflections like wet roads and shiny car paint reacting to light, stylized colors like neon blues, magentas, and orange streetlights setting the mood. These weren't just for looks, they helped the player feel speed and atmosphere. Light trails, reflections, and floating particles made driving feel faster and the city feel more alive. The game's visual style was led by Habib Zargarpour, senior art director at EA, who guided the visual effects approach in Underground. Zargarpour came from high-end film visual effects work with credits on movies like Twister, The Perfect Storm, and Star Wars Episode 1. Film VFX focuses on realistic lighting, strong composition, and visual impact. Most games at the time were still learning how to look more cinematic. Underground used that film train approach to lift its visual identity beyond standard arcade racers. When Need for Speed Underground came out in 2003, it quietly brought something new to the series that had never been done before. A real career mode with a story, characters, and a feeling of moving up in the world. It wasn't just a list of races anymore, it was about making your way to the top. Underground was the first game in the series to include a career mode with a full story, along with a garage system that was connected to how you upgraded your car and moved forward in the game. Earlier, Need for Speed games had tournaments, championships, or races that weren't strongly connected, but Underground changed that by creating a more story-driven experience. Races unlocked one after another, upgrades were linked to how well you performed and your reputation, characters appeared as rivals, friends, or people who controlled your progress, and everything was pushed forward by your growing status in the street racing world. The player wasn't just picking races. They were stepping into a world. The career mode follows a new racer making their way through Olympic City's underground scene. As they build a name for themselves, they unlock harder events and face more respected opponents. The story reflects this rise. Samantha acts as a guide to the city and its rules. Local racers challenge the player to prove their ability, reputation opens doors to bigger races, and the final chapter brings showdowns with elite drivers like Eddie, cementing the player's place at the top of the city's street racing ladder. Progression became about your social standing, not just upgrading your car. Winning wasn't only about being the fastest, it was about earning respect and becoming a known and powerful figure within a closed street racing world. The addition of a story and characters gave the player a reason to care. It put each race into context and tied your progress to your reputation, not just to winning individual events. Underground also brought storytelling to the series by using pre-rendered movie clips between races, pushing the franchise toward a more cinematic feel. These scenes weren't fancy by today's standards, but they did three important things. They made each race feel like a step in a larger story. They turned your rivals into real characters instead of just nameless AI drivers. And they made your overall progress feel like chapters in a book. Because of this, the game created a feeling of a continuous journey, something that the earlier games in the series mostly didn't have. The biggest change wasn't a flashy feature, but it was deeply important. Instead of the old pattern of picking a track, winning a race, and unlocking the next one, it was now about earning respect, getting noticed by other racers, building a name for yourself, and slowly working your way to the top of the street racing world. The career mode included over 100 races that were connected to upgrades, new cars, and the story's progress, which really strengthened the feeling of a long, slow climb to the top. EA Black Box didn't just create races for Need for Speed Underground. They built a game system based on identity, where how you performed, how your car looked, and your status in the game all work together in a continuous loop. At its core, the game follows a simple path. Race, earn money, upgrade your car, build your reputation, unlock new events, and do it all over again. Winning races unlocks new parts, new cars, and new invitations to compete, letting players dive deeper into the underground racing world. This setup turned racing from simple standalone events into a lifelike journey, where every win and every upgrade boosted your status, made you more visible, and solidified your role in the game's street racing culture. Black Box introduced a variety of race types that tested different skills, driving styles, and car setups. These weren't just for show, they were game mechanics that reflected real street culture. The main race types included circuit races, which required consistency and control over multiple laps. Sprint events focused on precision and risk-taking through city streets. drift competitions where points were earned through style and technical skill, and drag races, which tested your timing with gears and nitrous oxide. These modes were woven into the game's story, unlocking as players moved up the ranks in Olympic City's racing scene. This reinforced a feeling of status, skill, and belonging within the underground community. The Need for Speed series had tried different race types before, but Underground made them a core part of the experience. Notably, drifting and drag racing were formally introduced here and became recurring features in later games. What made Underground special wasn't just the cycle of racing, upgrading, and repeating, it was how tightly all the parts were connected. By the time Need for Speed Underground was ready for release, EA understood something important. This wasn't just another game in the series. It needed to be shown as a shift in culture. Electronic Arts spent around $5.8 million to market the game, a large budget for a racing game in 2003. That spending showed a change in how the company wanted the public to see the game. One of the smartest choices was how they handled the music. The game included songs from hip-hop, electronic, rock, and drum and bass, styles that were popular with young people and connected to city life. This did a few things. It placed the game inside current culture, made trailers feel like music videos, and linked the game to real-world scenes instead of just fake racing ideas. The marketing used this idea heavily, presenting Underground as something players would feel, not just play. It was sold as a cultural moment, not only a racing game. When Need for Speed Underground started development, its biggest challenge wasn't other racing games. It was the high expectations from its own company. The Need for Speed series already had a winning recipe: expensive cars, beautiful roads, and police chases. The developer, Black Box, decided to throw all of that away. Getting away from the police had been a key part of Need for Speed games for a long time, going all the way back to the 90s. Underground made the bold choice to remove it completely. Instead of running from the law, the game focused on illegal street races in a closed-off city. The goal changed from escape the cops to earn respect. The player wasn't being hunted, they were being judged by other racers. This one change shifted the entire feeling of the game. Previous games created excitement through danger, Underground created excitement through your reputation. It was no longer about surviving a chase. It was about proving you deserved to be part of the street racing scene. Older games in the series were all about high-end supercars, but Underground swapped those out completely for tuner imports. Cars like the Civic, RX-7, Supra, and Skyline, which were popular in real-world street racing. This wasn't just a different list of cars, it changed the dream the game was selling. Instead of dreaming of owning a Ferrari, you dreamed of building a car from the ground up, starting with a base model, then modifying, tuning, and improving it over time. The game featured real tuner cars and hundreds of custom parts, closely mirroring real car culture and making personalization a key part of your progress and identity in the game. Every race in Need for Speed Underground happens at night in the fictional Olympic City. Earlier Need for Speed games featured sunny daylight in a variety of locations, but this game purposely narrowed its focus to create a single strong visual style, one defined by glowing neon lights, reflections on wet streets, and the glare of headlights cutting through heavy traffic. From a design standpoint, this was a risk: less variety in the scenery, fewer changes in mood, and the chance of the game feeling repetitive. However, this trade-off created something more powerful: a consistent and memorable look and feel. Nighttime became the game's signature style, and Olympic City stopped feeling like just a collection of separate racetracks. It felt like a real, living city built around street culture, movement, and atmosphere. Need for Speed Underground came out worldwide in November 2003. It was released at the same time on PlayStation 2, Xbox, GameCube, and PC. This big, coordinated launch was designed to reach as many players as possible and make a huge cultural impact right from the start. What happened next wasn't just a good launch. It was a major turning point for the whole series. Right away, the game saw something rare. Both the critics and the players loved it. Need for Speed Underground got great reviews and sold very well from the beginning. This was a level of success the franchise hadn't seen in years. Reviewers praised the move towards street racing culture, the deep car customization, the movie-like presentation, and the cool, consistent nighttime feel. Some did note minor issues, like tracks feeling repetitive and a lack of variety in the environments, but the most important thing was that players came in huge numbers. The game went on to sell around 15 million copies worldwide. This made it one of the best-selling games in the entire series and one of the most successful racing games of its time. That sales number was incredibly important. It wasn't just a hit. It proved that the series' bold new direction was the right one. It showed that both critics and the market loved the focus on tuner culture, progressing by customizing your car and the game's single, unified city setting. EA didn't waste any time. The strong sales and cultural buzz led directly to a sequel. Need for Speed Underground 2 came out the very next year, in 2004. It continued the street racing theme and expanded on both the car customization and the city design. How quickly they made the sequel showed their confidence. Underground wasn't seen as a one-time success. It became the new foundation for the franchise. Veteran developers later described the franchise identity as something that always changed with car culture trends. Need for Speed Underground showed this philosophy at its best. Instead of just copying the car scene, it moved with it. It took tuner style, street vibes, and fan activities and placed them directly into its game design, look, and sense of progress. In the early 2000s, car culture was changing. Street racing, customized cars, and nitrous oxide were becoming more popular thanks to movies, magazines, and car fans. Underground came out right in the middle of this shift. As one writer later put it, street racing was having a massive cultural moment. It reflected it and let players be part of it from home. That kind of timing is rare. Most games followed trends. Underground arrived while the trend was still growing. Looking back, it's easy to think Underground was always going to happen. But that's not true. The game could have misunderstood car culture. Customization could have felt fake. Street racing could have seemed like a bad copy of the real thing. Instead, everything clicked. The cars felt real, the music felt now, the style matched what players saw in videos and magazines. The game's progression felt like earning respect in a real car scene. For a short time, the developers, the publisher, and the culture were all on the same page. And players felt it right away. If you found this video valuable, please like the video and subscribe to the channel. Your support is greatly appreciated. Thank you for watching!